flight all together now. And we're all a family under one sky. We're a family under one sky. Sing it again. We're all a family under one sky. A family under one sky. We've got light skin. We've got dark skin. We've got straight hair and curly too. Let me hear you. We speak English. We speak Spanish. We're different, but we're the same. Okay, here we go. And we're all a family under one sky. We're a family under one sky. Sing it again. We're all a family under one sky. We're a family under one sky. There's loads of books and loads of tales about Anansi, so be sure and check some of them out at the library. This is one where Anansi is not so much a trickster as he can't control himself. They ever talk about self-control with you here at school? He has a problem with self-control. Whatever you do, don't go and touch those beans. They're very hot and you could burn yourself. What did I say, Anansi? He said, I won't touch those. He found himself standing right in front of that pot of beans. He said, it won't hurt if I just take a taste. Grandma doesn't have to know. He took it out of the bowl. He blew on it. It was good. Maybe just one more. Maybe another. I've had 3. A 4th one's not going to make any difference. Well, Anansi got to thinking he'd like some more of that, and he wanted it to cool faster, so he took off his hat
and he put the beans in the hat. Well, the birds suddenly flew in the kitchen window where Anansi was, and the neighbors started pounding on the door. They said, "Anansi, let us in, let us get those birds, they're eating Grandma's beans." Well, there was Anansi, all those people at the door, and Anansi had those beans in his hat. You think he wanted them to see him with the beans in his hat?
No.
He had to hide them. Where do you think he could hide them?
Put it on his head.
Put it on. That's exactly what Anansi did. He grabbed those beans, he put them on his head. But you know, those beans had not had a chance to cool yet. And then they started to leave, and they saw Anansi standing there like this. They said, "Anansi, what's wrong?" He said, "Nothing's wrong. You can leave now. You can leave now." Well, Anansi was starting to sweat. The sweat was pouring down his face. He was starting to cry from the heat. They said, "Anansi, no, we need to help you. We're your friends, Anansi. Let us help you." Anansi just wanted them to leave. But Anansi was going like this, and he grabbed his hat and he started to move it around, to move the beans around. They said, "Anansi, what are you doing?" He said, "It's a dance. It's a dance." He said, "What kind of dance?" He said, "It's a hat-shaking dance. It's the hat-shaking dance." They said, "Oh, Nancy, that's a wonderful dance. Let us do it with you." So they all got up and they started doing the hat-shaking dance. Go ahead, do it with me. See, they started shaking that hat every now and then. They go, "Woo! Woo! Woo!" Let's go down to where my wife comes from in Latin America. Latin America is all these countries where they speak Spanish or Portuguese, okay? And I'm going to teach you a song called En la Pulga de San Jose. La Pulga is a market. There's lots of markets in Latin America. Here's a little food market, and here's a craft market. There's my nephews in a Mexican market that has all kinds of things. This is a pulga, a big market with everything in it, okay? And here's the pulga in this book, which comes from Diez Deditos by Jose Luis Orozco. And he's going to buy some instruments, and you guys are going to play them with me. Okay, there's Jose Luis Orozco, and here's his book, Diez Deditos, 10 Little Fingers. He also has De Colores and other Latin American folk songs. We're going to play the guitar, the clarinet, the violin, el violin, and the cello, el violón, and finally el tambor or tun-tun, the conga drum. So this is in Spanish, but it's very, very simple, and I know that you guys can learn it. The song says, En la pulga de San Jose. Can you say that? En la pulga de San Jose. Yo compré una guitarra. Yo compré una guitarra. That means I bought a guitar. Here we go. Here's how it goes. En la pulga de San Jose, yo compré una guitarra. Try that with me. En la pulga de San Jose, yo compré una guitarra. Okay, here's your guitar. Hold up the neck with one hand, strum with the other. Ta-da-ta-da-ta-da, la guitarra. Ta-da-ta-da-ta-da, la guitarra. Then sing, vaya usted, which means you go to. Vaya usted, a la pulga de San Jose. Tun, tun, el tun, tun. Lon, lon, violón. Lin, lin, violín. Nete, 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 clarinete. Tada, 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 la guitarra. Vaya usted, a la pulga de San Jose. Vaya usted, a la pulga de San Jose. Very good. I had a dog and his name was Blue. I had a dog and his name was Blue. I had a dog and his name was Blue. I bet you $5 he's a good dog too. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Try that with me. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Well, I shouldered my gun and I tooted my horn. Gonna catch a possum in the new ground corn. Old Blue barked and I went to see. He'd cornered a possum in a cinnamon tree. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Well, now, old Daniel Boone had a dog named Blue, and he was a good sniffer. He could stick his nose down on the ground here in Cary, and he could smell a raccoon over in Asheville. Well, one day, they were running across a field of tall grass, and old Blue, he was leaping high so he could see where he was going. And one time, he leapt up way up high into the air, and when he came down, there was an old sawmill blade hidden there in the grass. He came down right on that sawmill blade, cut him right in two. Front end split off from the back end just like that. But Daniel Boone was always prepared. He had a little baggie in his pocket with super glue in it. He took some out, he slapped some on the front end, he slapped some on the back end, and then he held them together. Count with me to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Blue was all back together again. He barely missed a heartbeat. He blinked his eyes a couple of times. Whoop, whoop. He barked. He was ready to go. Well, he was almost ready to go. You see, there was one small mistake that Daniel made. He was in such a hurry to get them back together again that, well, you tell me if you know what he did that kind of caused the problem. He put him to, what did he do? He put his tail on upside down. Oh my God, you're thinking that poor hunting dog, aren't you? That's what you're thinking, aren't you? Go ahead and admit it. You're thinking that dog ain't gonna hunt no more possum, aren't you? Say that. That dog ain't gonna hunt no more possum.
Well, you're wrong. Because you see, old Blue, he was a clever dog and he was very, very perseverant. He learned to run on his front legs. He just watched old Daniel and he copied him. He'd run alongside old Daniel, but he had one advantage. When his front legs got tired, why, he'd just flip over and his back legs. That's the story of it. Now, we all know about recycling, maybe, how you use things in new ways, okay? Well, in the old days, when you got these big old holes in your blue jeans, like he's got, and your mama said, no more wearing those blue jeans, she didn't just throw those blue jeans out. She took the blue jeans and she cut out squares and shapes out of the good part of the blue jeans. She did that with all the leftovers for the clothes, and then when she got a nice big pile, she'd say, it's time to make a patchwork quilt. And she'd sew those patches together and she'd make something new out of those old things. Now, here are the motions. I want you to put on a pair of glasses for your grandma, because you know our eyes get old. On my grandma's, and probably the first place you need a patch is right here, because you're sitting on it all the time. So for patch, I want you to kind of hit your bottom. Patchwork, and for quilt, I want you to pretend you've got a needle and you're sewing, okay? On the grandma's patchwork quilt, let me see it. Squares of corduroy and silk, then green and blue, and yellow too on the grandma's patchwork quilt. I'm going to tell you a story about a creature, an imaginary creature in Japan called a tengu, has a long nose, and an animal called a badger. A badger looks kind of like a raccoon, and he likes to play tricks. When he got a little closer, he saw what they were laughing at. One of those children had a fan in his hand. And when he would fan with a fan, his nose would go...
Like Pinocchio.
Uh-huh. And then he would turn the fan over, and his nose would go... Now, I need you to help me. Whenever I fan a nose in here, I need you to make those noses and make the nose get long. You ready? Get your finger here. Ready? We'll go... Turn it over, and we'll go...
He did it again. And the children all laughed. Well, Badger said to himself, I'll bet if I had that magic fan, I could make a lot of money. He walked along a beautiful country road. He walked for about an hour or 2 hours until he came to a city. He was looking for something. He looked until he came to a great big house. And he said to himself, I'll bet the richest people in town live in that house. That's just what I want. He looked through the gate. There was a big lawn, and asleep on the lawn was a pretty girl. This is perfect, he said. Badger went under the gate, and he went up to that girl, and he took out his fan. Are you ready? He sat down right beside her nose, and he started to fan, and her nose went. About 3 feet out there, he put away the fan, and he left. The girl was asleep with her long nose, and when she woke up, in about an hour, she thought she saw something in front of her nose. She reached out to move it, and ouch! It was her nose. My nose, she said. What happened to my nose? She went running into the house. She said, Mommy, Poppy, my nose, it's 3 feet long. What am I going to do? Well, they were as upset as she was. That girl was just about the right age to get married, and they all were thinking the same thing. Who's going to want to marry a girl with a 3-foot nose? He came up to her with that needle, and she said, No! And she ran right out of the house. Well, they didn't know what to do. What were they going to do? The father finally put an advertisement in the newspaper, and it said that anybody who could cure their daughter's 3-foot nose could marry her and have half of all their money. That is just what Badger was waiting for. Now, he was a shapeshifter. He could change his shape. And the next morning, he changed into a handsome young man, and he knocked on the door. He said, I can cure your daughter's 3-foot nose. Just give me 5 minutes alone with her. And so he went in, he closed the door, he got down beside the girl, he took out his fan, he turned it over, started to fade. And you know what her nose did? Help me out. Her nose went. It was all gone. Well, the parents were delighted, and so was the girl. She was going to marry this handsome man who she didn't know was really a badger, an animal. It went out all the way into outer space to where the stars were in the Milky Way. Well, Badger did not know that that day there were some extraterrestrials out there, and they were building a bridge across the Milky Way, and they were using logs. Well, they were short one log. They needed one log to finish that bridge. One log, and they couldn't find it, but then suddenly, through the stars came Badger's nose, and it was just the right size. They took some cord, and they tied his nose to the other logs, tied it up tight, and they went home from work. They went home. Well, about an hour later, Badger woke up, and what did Badger see when he looked out? His nose. was all the way out through the clouds into outer space. Oh my gosh, he thought, what am I going to do? He grabbed his fan, he turned it over, and he started to fan. He fanned as hard as he could, and you know what? His nose started to shrink. His nose started to shrink, but there was a problem. You see, one end of his nose was tied to the logs in the Milky Way. The other end was not tied to anything. And so what happened to Badger? When his nose shrunk, Badger went out through the clouds, out into outer space, all the way to the Milky Way, till he was hanging from that bridge in the Milky Way. And for all I know, he might be still hanging there in the Milky Way. But you know what? I think it serves him right for playing all those mean tricks. Don't you?
Yeah.
And there I am at my friend Wagatsama's house way up in the country. Does that look like me? It doesn't, but that's me 50 years ago. That's me in 1970, 48 years ago. And I'm smashing some soybeans. And that's a little neighborhood festival. They're doing an old dance with those strange masks on, and a woman and her baby in the crowd watching them. That's my friend Wagatsama with me. We're at Deer Park. The deer are tame. There are many beautiful, beautiful parks there. And there I am in the Japanese Alps, and I stayed in a little cabin overnight and talked with that girl in Japanese with my dictionary. Met lots of friendly people there. It's wonderful to travel around to different countries and cultures, and you know, if you can't do it yourself, taking a plane or a train, you know how you can do it? Come to the library and read a book.
If we could consider each other a neighbor, a sister, or brother, it could be a wonderful, wonderful world. It could be a wonderful world. Oh yes, it could be a wonderful world.
If each little kid could have fresh milk each day, if all working folks had enough time to play, if each homeless still had a good place to stay, it could be a wonderful world. Oh yes, it could be a wonderful world.
If we could consider each other a neighbor, a sister, or brother, it could be a wonderful,